latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. The market reaction to the prospect of firing Jerome Powell as head of the Fed, that was the handle from the Eastern Seaboard Press Corps yesterday as the Dow slid almost 1,000 points. And this against the backdrop of National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett's comments on Friday that the White House is studying whether or not Jay Powell can legally be fired, because that's what President Trump seems to indicate he wants to do if Powell doesn't cut interest rates right quick. Is it a good idea? Is it a good idea for Trump to do it? Is it a good idea for the president, whether that president is named Trump or not, to have the power to do it, which is a separate question that the Trump White House is examining right now? For thoughts on the answer to that question, please be joined by James Fishback, who's the CEO of investment firm Azoria. James, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, good morning, Dan.
So you've penned a piece arguing that it should be settled law with it, that it is within the purview of the president to hire and fire the Fed chairman.
Well, that's right. I mean, if the president can hire and fire the Treasury Secretary, the Defense Secretary, the Commerce Secretary, then he can fire the Fed chair if the Fed chair isn't doing a good job. There's three questions here, Dan. The first is, can he do it? The second is, should he do it? But the third and most important, let's start with it, is why would he do it? Why is President Trump even considering firing Jay Powell as the head of the Fed? And it goes back a couple of years. I mean, Jerome Powell has been dead wrong at every single turn in our economy. When inflation was reached 5% in June of 2021, Powell kept rates at zero for another 9 months. Mind you, our inflation target is 2%. It hit 5% in June of 21. He did nothing until March of 22 when it hit 8.5%. And that's when, for the first time, he raised rates off of 0% to hold the phone, 0.25%, a quarter point rate hike. So much of the price increase, the mistakes that were made during the pandemic with inflation go right back to the Fed. And so there's real reason to suspect that he made a massive mistake there. The second is that when the economy was punching above its weight, 3% right before the election, stocks were at all-time highs, inflation was actually still above target. What did he do? He, without explanation, cut interest rates by 0.5 percentage point, the largest cut in 4 years, in what appears to be the throwing of a lifeline to Kamala Harris right before the election. And so this is a guy who hasn't just gotten it wrong, but has gotten it wrong in what seems like very political, incentivized ways. And so now President Trump is saying, wait, hold on a sec. Stocks are down. We're in the middle of a tariff negotiation. Inflation is back near the Fed's 2% target. And now you won't cut rates. Now you won't give consumers and businesses a break. Now you won't give our government an opportunity to have some wiggle room during this trade transition period. And so 3 strikes and you're out. And that's why we're even having this conversation, is the time and again mistakes this man has made. If he messed up like this as a fry cook at McDonald's in the loop, he would have been thrown out a long time ago. And the Fed chair is no different.
Well, the case that you're making arguably could be well within the purview of the president. You fire him for a cause. I mean, he's not at will, but he is fireable for a cause. And some of the points you make, politicizing your job seems to be, for example, a legitimate basis to fire for cause.
Yeah, I would think so. The issue with the for cause argument, which is what the Federal Reserve Act lays out right now, is that it sets the bar pretty high. It talks about malfeasance. It talks about inefficiency. That bar is not the same for a cabinet secretary. If the president were to let go of Scott Bessent, I don't see why he would. He's been an incredible Treasury secretary. But the truth is that at the end of the day, the president should have the ability to let go of anyone who isn't doing their job. Look, it's not in President Trump's interest to fire somebody just for the sake of firing him because of the chaos that could wreak on markets and the economy and so on. But let's talk about the chaos that this guy has wreaked on the economy, Jay Powell, for the last 3-4 years, making mistake after mistake. Enough's enough.
Well, then who should replace him, hypothetically, if he did get fired?
That's a good question. There's a lot of qualified people. I like Kevin Warsh from Stanford, John Taylor. There's so many. These are highly qualified. John Taylor is a PhD economist who's actually been right about the effects of the pandemic, doing this now for 40 years. There's a lot of great names out there. I don't want a political appointee in this position. I don't want, someone like a Peter Navarro type individual. We need somebody who is a free thinker, not necessarily an academic, but an academic would be definitely okay. But Jay Powell is, at this point, he has made too many mistakes. And at the end of the day, has he apologized to anybody? Has he apologized to the American people for the 25% increase in prices that happened under his watch during the pandemic? He's the Fed chair. He's supposed to take accountability. He hasn't. It's time for him to go.
But then you also, even if you fired Powell tomorrow, you still have the Fed, the regional Fed bank presidents that he can't fire. So you whatever policy. I understand the idea. You have an effective, charismatic, respected leader, and the Fed bank presidents at the regional level will go along as they have been with Jay Powell. But maybe that's the case. Maybe it isn't. We don't know.
Yeah, the Fed is actually not a democracy in a traditional sense. I've been studying the Fed, trading the Fed as an investor now for over a decade. Fed decisions don't ever come down to a vote. It's not like, it was close and they didn't cut rates, or it wasn't close and they hiked rates. It's really led by the chair. You look at the minutes of the meetings, the transcripts, the entire discussion, what comes up in the meetings, the general direction of these negotiations happens with the chair. I don't actually have much beef with the Fed regional presidents. One, I think they're generally good people. They represent good geography. Powell was born, raised, lived his entire life in D.C. That's really the only perspective he has. You got folks out in Kansas City, in St. Louis. Those are good representations of the commercial, agricultural, industrial industry of this country. But also remember that the regional Fed presidents only vote on a rotating basis. So at any given time, there's only 3 of them who vote. So I don't think that, by the way, it's a silver bullet to remove Powell and hire someone more competent, but I think it does fix a lot of the near-term problems.
And then the substantive issue is Trump right? The substantive economic issue, not personnel issue, is Trump right? You agree with him that Jay Powell should be moving with more alacrity to cut rates?
Yeah, by the way, it's not Powell versus Trump. It's Powell versus the facts. The facts are that inflation is the lowest it's been in 4 years. Fact number one. Fact number two, Powell only seems concerned about tariffs, but not focused on the disinflationary, which is to say the lowering of inflation of President Trump's policies like deregulation, like lowering fiscal spending, and getting rid of the immigration burden. And then finally, the most important piece of all of this is that look at what other central banks, look at what Jay Powell's colleagues are doing in England and Canada and in Europe. They're all preemptively lowering rates right now. So everyone's like, well, Jerome Powell is being bullied by Trump. No, Jerome Powell is being bullied by the economic facts and realities on the ground. And if this was some sort of Trump calling an audible, wanting to do something that wasn't in everyone's best interest, why is Europe, Canada, and England all doing the exact same thing that Jay Powell refuses to do? I'll tell you the truth. If Kamala Harris were president right now, Jay Powell will have already cut rates 3 times this year, and he would never have apologized for it. That is the truth. This is the guy, by the way, that after George Floyd happened in the summer of 2020, he went during a FOMC press conference, that's the official press conference of the Fed, and admitted there was racial injustice in this country. He admitted to focusing and studying and committing to black unemployment rates as opposed to any other race. This is a highly political man. I really had high hopes from when President Trump hired him back in 2017. But at this point, he is unqualified for the job. Let's put somebody better in there who can represent the American people.
Now, I wanted to get to something else, too, with you, because you're the Doge stimulus check guy. This is your brainchild. Is that a fair statement?
It is, yes.
So where do you think that stands? Because some of the numbers emanating from Doge right now, and I know there's still time, but suggests that the idea of $1 trillion in reduced spending, that may not materialize, may not be actually that close to that number. Is the Doge stimulus check still something you think needs to be pursued?
I absolutely think so. And you'll remember that the proposal I put forward with the Doge check was 20% of whatever Doge saves, whether that's $2 trillion, $1 trillion, heck, if it's even $500 billion, 20% of whatever amount is saved ought to go right back to the taxpayer, because it was the taxpayer who sent it to D.C. in the first place. And then we later figured out it was abused, misused, and neglected. And so that's where I stand on it. Now, if that number ends up being lower than anticipated, that's just a fact. And then the check would be smaller. We said the $5,000 check was predicated on a $2 trillion savings. So if it's $1 trillion, it's a $2,500 check. If it's $500 billion, it's a $1,250 check. That's still real money, and the taxpayer deserves to have a refund on their tax dollars that were sent to D.C. and not spent wisely.
And the just the thinking behind that is, I mean, because I guess it's, might be slightly stimulative on the consumer side, particularly if, depending on where we are with trade arrangements in across the globe. But I mean, it really sounds to me like your idea is more based on just the principle of this is what we can do, and a little bit of a prove up. This is what we can do if we rein in government spending. We can return your money to you to spend how you see fit for you. And let's keep this process rolling. Let's build on whatever Doge is able to accomplish in this iteration for future iterations, so we can keep going in this direction of reducing government's distribution of other people's stuff and reserving that for you, the taxpayer.
That's exactly right, Dan. And
Okay.
It's not something we would want to be a one-time thing. We would want this to continue into perpetuity for two reasons. One, cutting government spending, cutting waste, fraud, and abuse is never popular because there are key beneficiaries to that waste, fraud, and abuse. A number of them in D.C., a number of them both Republican and Democrat. And so the idea is, how can we get the public on board with this? They hear all the scary headlines and the AstroTurf town halls about Social Security checks not being mailed out next month. What this tells the American taxpayer is that when we save money, you get a check back. And second, it incentivizes the taxpayer to be a part of the process with us. Look at what Doge has been able to accomplish with Elon and a couple dozen engineers drinking Red Bull and eating Chick-fil-A. Now imagine what Doge will be able to accomplish if you deputize 100 million American taxpayers to be our eyes and ears. Oh, you saw FEMA misusing tax dollars, right? Oh, call it in. You saw HUD doing XYZ, call it in. You went to the VA, as I did with my grandfather growing up. He was a World War II vet. And you talked to nurses and physicians who complained about waste and fraud in their own facility. Call it in. And so what we've got to do is we've got to revive this spirit of, if you see something, say something when it comes to government abuse of taxpayer money. And so my hope is that the Doge dividend check becomes part of a system where every 2 years we look back at the last two and say, how much did we save? And we cut a check to the taxpayer, effectively saying, look, we're sorry. You effectively overpaid your taxes because we misused them. Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter. And we want to send you back some of the money because we know that Americans will be better stewards of that extra savings than the federal government will be.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like the philosophy behind it. James Fishback, CEO of investment firm Azoria. James, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer.
You've worked hard and accumulated wealth, but you know the pitfalls involved in passing significant assets to your heirs. The team at Spahn Financial will help you feel secure with personalized financial planning to achieve your legacy goals. They anticipate and manage all your wealth planning needs and focus on the full financial picture, including tax efficiency, income distribution throughout retirement, philanthropic giving, estate planning, and more. They even help you prepare the next generation to be good stewards. Kevin Spahn is a 2025 Barron's Top 1200 financial advisor, and Spahn Financial is a Forbes Best in State Wealth Management team. Visit SpahnFinancial.com to schedule a consultation and to view disclosures. That's SPAHN Financial.com. Barron's Top 1200 Financial Advisors list, March 2025. Data as of 9/30/2024. Forbes Best in State Wealth Management team, January 2025. Data as of 3/31/24. No compensation provided for ratings. Marketing fees apply to promote ratings. Rankings and recognitions are no guarantee of future investment success.
You've heard us talk about our campaign this spring with Caring Network. They're a local pro-life organization based in Chicagoland. They're working to prevent abortions in Illinois by reaching abortion-minded women with a message of life and hope. But they need your help to do that. Abortion has become a destination for abortion tourism, quote unquote. As our neighboring states have restricted abortion, more women are coming to Illinois. The number of abortions in Illinois has actually doubled in less than 7 years. Caring Network is committed to reaching the abortion-minded woman, the woman who gets pregnant unexpectedly, and is likely to go to a Planned Parenthood or another